Hey everybody, welcome to The Early Edge, a mentorship podcast for next generation leaders where we share insights we wish we had learned earlier in our careers.
We want to equip you to learn more, grow faster, and thrive in both your work and personal life. I'm Jay.
And I'm Jeff. Let's get into today's episode.
Welcome back to The Early Edge. We are excited to have a guest and friend with us today. Tom Ujvagi is a consultant and a buddy that I've gotten to do some projects with. He brought us a really cool idea that we think will be valuable for our listeners, and it's something that I think is near and dear to all of our hearts because we've seen it a lot, we've experienced it ourselves, and the three of us all have children who are entering this stage of life, and we think it'll be helpful. So Tom, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Jeff. Glad to be here.
Why don't you give us your elevator pitch introduction? Who the heck are you? What do you do? Where you're from? Tell us about your family, etc.
Well, we'll keep it short. So I've been happily married to Carrie for 27 years. We've got 4 kids between the ages of 17 and 25, so close to empty nesters. We're working on our way there.
Good luck.
On a business perspective, I retired as a partner of a regional consulting firm about 2 years ago, and have been doing independent work since then, primarily focused on strategic planning and fractional executive support, generally CFO or COO type roles.
Excellent. You also live in Cincinnati as well, so that's cool. The topic you suggested is management contradictions. In a nutshell, what did you mean by that?
Well, when we get into this a little bit, you'll see it too, is I really like to present the two extremes of things when you come to being a manager or learning to be a manager. And then ultimately, though, the whole point is you got to learn to find the right part of the gray to live in from there. So being a manager isn't black and white. It's figuring out how to adapt to a situation, but also trying to ensure you have the appropriate level of consistency so that you're providing the right guidance and inspiration to your team.
I love it when we have a guest on that. I won't presume any age or career length here other than maybe at least 20 years. Fair so far?
Very fair.
That has boiled down so many things they've learned over decades into a couple of really key things. I think that's so valuable, and we hope that people find so much use in these 5. We prepped a little bit, and I think these are very applicable.
Yeah, and I think that's great that you call that out, Jeff, that there are some principles that emerge, some themes that emerge, some regular patterns that emerge that those of us who've been at it a little longer recognize. And Tom, you said during prep, you're hoping that folks that are either actually before they become managers or leaders of people, that they start to look for these things to get prepared for these things, these management contradictions, so they're more equipped when they get into that first role.
And it's not even just being more equipped for the role, which is definitely a point there, but also you can make your manager's life a lot easier and maybe get considered for that promotion sooner by adopting things like this. Because you'll see when we go through this, it's not, if you're the manager who everyone comes with their problems to, you think you're being a great manager, but I think when we go through this, you'll realize that's going to start to overwhelm you, and you're not necessarily developing your resources that well then. It's really helping your employees be able to solve some of their problems themselves. That will then free up bandwidth and produce better results for the team. And you might not get all the glory yourself on every single item that's solved, but your team will really be recognized as a high-performing team when you're able to maximize the talents of everyone there.
Yeah, that's great. Well, let's get into the first one. Management is great except for the people.
I use this all the time with people, and we normally get a good chuckle out of this. I heard Jeff chuckle a little with that one too. People are what make you a manager. You have to have some people working for you to be a manager. It's not just a title that you're given. Now, with that, you have to recognize that, people are your greatest asset, but they're also, they have personal problems too. They're going to have issues that come up with their families. They're going to have different things that are impacting their lives. And sometimes you're going to think you have the perfect day planned out. You're going to get all these amazing things done for your company. And then someone's child is sick. Someone quits on you. You've got a performance issue that comes up. Things along those lines, and it will just totally blow your day up, and you have to know how to react and still get your work done too.
Or somebody just has a bad attitude. sometimes it's the concrete things, but then
or they make a mistake,
or they make a
boneheaded
mistake. Right. Gosh, we're all human.
What's the right area of gray or the mindset that we ought to have as a leader of people when being a manager is great, but people are challenging or you can't predict things? So what's the healthy mindset that you've learned to adopt related to this?
The thing that I really try to remind people, and Jeff, it's kind of great prompt there. So if someone has a bad attitude, a bad day, they make a mistake, don't take that same bad attitude yourself. Don't have a bad day yourself just because of that. Kind of really just work with them. And that's the whole thing too is, management is great except for the people. People's a word there. I'm a person. Everyone we work with is a person. Yeah. None of us are perfect. We're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to have bad days. And to me, that's really the big point to take away from this one is that, it's all about people. Yes, you've got work and you've got commitments and you've got other things that to get done, but it's all about the people and recognizing that you're a person, they're a person, and you shouldn't be, letting them change you too much from a bad day, mistake, or something along those lines. Trust
and relationship, right? It goes so far in building long-term relationships.
Plus, don't be surprised also. If you expect, it's a great mindset to have is, I'm not going to let it ruin my day because I'm predicting or expecting some of these things to happen. So why would I be surprised? Why would I let it bring me down? If I have someone on my team that's having a bad day or someone that's made a mistake, that's what we would expect.
And that's another aspect. So if Jay, you and I are working together and, you've got a bad attitude or someone says, hey, Jay, when I take over a team, they're like, Jay has a bad attitude all the time. Well, sitting down and talking to Jay a little bit about, Jay, is there something going on? Is there's something outside of work? Is, that kind of aspect that you have to kind of address. Don't just, allow people to say, hey, Jay's got a bad attitude. Yeah. Great story here. There was a woman when I was working at a bank and we had a call center. They were like, this person is terrible with customers, but she can get, she always knows the answers. She's just terrible with customers. And everyone in the entire call center knew it. And I said, well, do we fix her customer service or do we find a role where she's non-customer facing where we can, get the most out of the value that she already brings? We talked to her. She says, yeah, I hate talking to customers. I'm like, then why are we putting you on the phones all the time? Let's put you in the back office where she knocked out a ton of, ton of activity in the back office and didn't have to deal with customers. So we, changed her role, and then that perception of her as, having a bad attitude or being terrible with customers went away. It wasn't something she enjoyed, and let's play to her strengths.
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah, she enjoyed the job better. I think this whole point reminds me of the importance of not so much the bad attitude, but putting failures on the table in front of people, a little bit of vulnerability.
Yep.
Because the more you put your weakness or your failure on the table, the team can rally around you and you can resolve it more quickly.
Yeah, and I love, Tom, the people thing is really important there. Somebody took the time to go talk to her and say, hey, this is a perception or a reality. Let's talk about it. Oh, you hate that? Oh, well, maybe we ought to do something about that. Fit for purpose.
Yep. Yeah. No,
okay.
That's perfect.
Great.
That's really, this discussion, I think, is a great transition to the next one.
Go ahead. What is it?
So be friendly with your employees, but not their friend.
Be friendly with your employees, but not their friend. Ooh, unpack that one.
This one is a tough one. And what I've really noticed with this is when you're a new manager, first-time manager in more of a lower level team, I think you have to really follow this one more strictly. As you get further in your career, this one is totally gray, and you really have to figure this one out. A lot of it may be by personal preference, though. But I think what I'm really trying to talk about, we talked about people here previously is, and Jeff, you mentioned relationships. You need to have a relationship with all of your employees. You need to make sure they're comfortable coming to you. You can't just say, hey, I have an open door policy, and then, sit there and, heads down on your computer all the time. You need to truly have that relationship, but you've got to be careful, because if you become too friendly, if you're out, going out all the time with your team, and Jeff and I are out partying every weekend together, and we either never invite Jay, or Jay's too busy or doesn't think it's appropriate to come along. When a tough situation comes along, they might think I'm favoring Jeff just because we're friends, and that's tough situation you don't want to get yourself
I was going to ask you, what's the consequence or downside of this? And it sounds like that's one of the key ones, is you're viewed as favoriting someone, or it could, I guess, since we've all read stories of it leading to unethical behavior and really bad decisions.
I know some of those. Those aren't ones I'm going to share. Something that we're going to record.
Of other people, not you, of course.
No,
yes,
not me. No, but I mean, the other kind of downside to it also is they might become a great friend of yours. And then if you do have to, take some action or discipline them, you can really harm your friendship then. So there's, that the other aspect of it too of, hey, I don't want to take this action, or I don't, there's that favoritism side. But then if you do that, if you do what's necessary as a manager, you might really hurt your friendship, and that's going to, then bother you personally also.
So I love the flip side of that. I was thinking the same thing, is if you, through natural relationship evolution, you are hanging out with one of your direct reports a lot, you might be afraid to take the action you need to take from a performance management perspective, from a discipline perspective, not because you're consciously favoring somebody, but the depth of relationship. I'm worried about perhaps losing this relationship, or, Jeff's just a great dude, so I'm going to give him more of a pass because I just know he's a solid performer. So you do have to be careful, but I assume you're not saying don't build relationship with your team.
The key thing is you need to have that relationship, because if you're too distant, they won't feel comfortable coming to you when there's a problem, or you won't be able to. It also helps you when there is a performance issue. If you have that relationship, you can go, hey, Jeff, I understand you've got this going on or this going on, or, I've noticed your quality or quantity has been slipping a little bit lately. You've got that base. So, it's still good. Go out to lunch with people, maybe have some happy hours, things like that. The one thing related to it that is probably really relevant for people these days is social media. My general guideline was I'll be a LinkedIn connection with you when we're working together, but I won't be, other platforms, Insta, Snap, Facebook, anything like that until we're not necessarily working together anymore.
Probably smart.
Trying to keep that personal side separate, and it's just kind of letting people know that too. That's my standard.
Is it fair to say you might want to know enough about them personally, their family, their, any major situations in life, but you don't need to know every picture they post on LinkedIn and what they're doing every weekend?
Correct.
Yeah.
That's pretty smart. There's a condition that people can find themselves in, and it comes up when I do frontline leader training or first-time leader training, is, hey, I was a member of this team, and then I became the leader or the supervisor. So we were buddies as coworkers, and now I'm the boss. So how do you advise people to navigate that when they have the depth of peer working friendship, and then one of them becomes the leader?
I've had that happen multiple times, and the key thing that I've found there, that it's actually an asset if you handle it right. But when you're friends with them, you need to, as soon as it's announced or going to be announced, when you can talk about it, that's where let's go have lunch. Let's go grab a drink. Let's have this discussion, and just,
that's smart.
You got to put it out there of our relationship is going to change. It has to change. Are you aware of that? Are you comfortable with that? And, taking the lead on that, as opposed to just kind of letting it happen. That's, Jeff, you've said relationship a few times, that's not having a relationship with someone, right? If you just kind of ignore the elephant in the room, that you need to have the relationship strong enough that you can have that discussion with them.
And that's back to our favorite word, intentionality. So being wise enough to say, you know what, we're not just going to not talk about it. Let's actually proactively set ourselves up for success and talk about it. What are the new ways we need to operate for this to be successful?
Yeah.
It seems like, too, one common situation where I see this and the importance of protecting against the downside of this is when a senior leader or leader is hired by an organization, and then they go back and hire people that they've worked for before, and they're bringing in a lot of their quote-unquote buddies.
Yeah.
You really got to be intentional there, or else the organization, the people that are already at the organization, feel like there's all this favoritism because that individual, he or she, just brought in 4 of their favored people. You really got to be intentional there.
Yeah. And I haven't experienced that personally as a manager. I've experienced that in consulting roles that I've been in where, it's there's fear on the initial team because, they've got a track record of bringing in their friends or, the people they've worked with before. And sometimes that's good, sometimes not so good.
Yeah, good tip. Well, let's go to the third one. Recognize that you can be a colossal failure, but don't let anyone know you ever think this.
This one's a little harsh, huh?
This is imposter syndrome. This
is.
This is so much former episode imposter syndrome. So yeah.
Well, I can't wait for you to unpack this because I want to know how important the word think is, because I think the word think is really important here.
Yeah. And this one, this one, we all laughed a little at this one. This one seems pretty extreme, and it's intentionally meant that way. But I kind of talk about a little bit controlled paranoia. So, you as a manager probably need to look at things as a glass half empty, but present to your team that it's half full. So you don't want to, present that everything's great all the time, right? When it's not, but you also don't want to be Chicken Little of, the sky is falling, the world's coming to an end on every issue that's out there. So you've got to be aware of all the potential pitfalls that you might step in as you're moving forward, and figure out the right way to communicate and prepare your team, involve people from your team on those, because it's very easy to, always paint the picture of positivity. I have a client that I've worked with recently where, everything's great, everything's great, everything's great. Oh, everything's terrible.
That strikes a nerve with me, because the issue with that style is you lose credibility with people when you're not speaking honestly about the reality. You can be optimistic and hopeful about how you're going to navigate that with the team. But if you're always painting a picture that everyone just knows is not true, you lose their respect. So I'm glad you brought that up, because it's an important thing. I want to unpack a little bit more this notion that you have to be a bit of a pessimist to yourself, looking around corners, worrying about what might happen. But the image you project to your team is optimism or positivity that is genuine and grounded in reality. Can you say more about that tension between those two?
Yeah, and what really becomes tough is when things are bad.
Yeah.
So there were times when, I was working during the financial crisis when, we were just, hey, are we going to make it this quarter? Are we going to make it this month? Are we going to be acquired? What's going on? Those are probably some of the tougher situations, because that's where you have to share, hey, things are tough here, but use that as a, let's rally together around this, and how can we get through, and let's brainstorm as a team how we can get through some of these situations. That's where that contradiction is even tougher is when things are bad. But hopefully you don't run into as many of those financial crisis situations going forward.
That would be an interesting episode to just talk about the financial crisis and all the lessons learned from it. Sure. But the way in my mind I'm separating the line between what you acknowledge and what you don't. And the reason I pulled on the word think is back to imposter syndrome. And listeners, if you haven't listened to that episode yet, please go back. That episode talks about how we all have doubts in our mind, and those are natural, and you don't need to put all your doubts on the table, because so many of them are just tape loops that play in our brain that are not true. But in reality, there are failures, and those you must put on the table. To me, those are kind of the two sides of this coin that I hear you talking about.
And you can't let your failures define you. Now, learn from your failures, right? I always like to say, never make the same mistake twice. Everyone's going to make mistakes, right? Try to learn from those so that you don't repeat those mistakes again. Now, I can't say I've been perfect with that in my life either. I've made the same mistake more than once before, but don't let those mistakes define you, especially as a leader, and play to your strengths where you can.
Yeah, that's great. The management of the potential downsides and having that in your mind is also a thing that relates to the former one where you talk about, I'm not your buddy, I'm your boss. If you developed too much of a relationship that crosses the line, you could start to let out in both your body language and the things you say to your buddy direct report that things aren't as good, or you're worried about this thing, and that can bleed into their mindset about it. So we want our team to be confident, positive, optimistic when tough, aware of the reality, but also knowing you have a plan, believing in your leadership. So we have to be careful not to disclose too much of our what if thinking, because we don't want the team always wondering and worrying what if, because they'll lose sight of the target.
And that goes back to the first point too, where we talk about people, right?
Yeah.
They're people. They've got, relationships they're in, wives, girlfriends, husbands, boyfriends,
Yes.
Kids, rents, mortgages, car payments, things like that too. They're all people too. So you got to make sure you think of them as people also.
Great point. All right, let's go to the next one. Meet all of your commitments, but don't overcommit. What does that mean?
So I like to put this one as the easiest thing as a manager is to overcommit. Anytime someone comes to you with a problem, you can take on their problem and you think you are the hero because you're going to solve all the problems for your team.
Got it.
But you've got a team, and let's say you've got a team of just 5 people working for you, and every one of those people once or twice a week comes to you with a problem. You're like, I got that, Jeff. I got that, Jay. I got that. I got that. I got that. And then you're missing a commitment somewhere. You're either missing the commitments you have to your management for work that you're supposed to be doing individually, or you're missing the commitments to your team that you said, hey, I'll resolve that for you. Or even, one of the other aspects that I've seen with this too is you say, hey, I'm going to solve that for you, Jeff. But then you don't solve it the way Jeff wanted it solved.
Yeah.
There's 2 or 3 ways you could have solved it, and you pick option A, and Jeff's like, oh, well, I don't really like option A. Why didn't you do B or C? And you're like, well, I thought I was helping you out, Jeff. And, Jeff isn't going to be as grateful for that then.
I think this one, so far of the 4, when I think of people in their 20s and 30s, early in their career, who may be in their first leadership role, this may be the one that is so easy to get into. To your point, I'll take it, because in their mind, hey, I have worked here for a bit. I know how things operate. I'm now in a leadership role. They clearly promoted me because I know things.
Yes.
And I'm just going to take it on. And all of a sudden, to your point, it's not necessarily overpromise. Your word is overcommit. And I think that's what it is. You're taking on too much, and you've committed to too much, and you can't get it all done.
It often happens in the scenario where we get promoted out of our team, unless we had a leader who modeled the right level of commitment, meaning they would not take on our problems. They would teach us how to solve them. Unless we had that modeled for us, you can imagine that when I get promoted out of my team and I'm their leader, all I think about is, well, the best way I can help them is by making their lives easier. They promoted me because I know things, or I'm a high producer, so I guess I should be doing more of the same thing, just I'm smarter at it and I'm better. So I will do their stuff for them because that's all I know. That's such a great tip, I think, Jeff, you're right. This is probably the most natural pitfall for leaders of the younger generation, first-time leaders.
The importance of delegation.
Yeah.
My oldest son just got promoted. He's been with a company here in Cincinnati for about 2.5 years, I think, and he just got promoted, and he's now in a role where he has probably twice the size of the team. And I think this is the one that, it'd be so easy for him just to say, I got it, especially in an organization where he knows some things need to be changed.
The way I like to visualize this for people, so there's a book called The 1 Minute Manager Meets the Monkey. And I haven't read the book in a long time, so I'm sure I'm missing parts of this too. But everyone's walking around with monkeys on their back, right? And the monkeys are the problems that you have. So if everyone comes to you and you say, hey, let me take that monkey off your back and put it on mine. I'll take that off your back, put it on mine. You have so many monkeys on your back, you're just overwhelmed. And, they're going to just drown you because you can't handle the weight of all those monkeys. And initially, the people working for you are going to feel better. They're like, oh, he took that weight off my shoulders. But then eventually they're going to start seeing, well, those monkeys are still running around here. They're not even on Tom's back anymore. They're just running around the office causing problems all over the place. And so it's a good visual I like to use to think about this one.
And to me, so many times, all those monkeys on my back, but my superiors and my subordinates don't necessarily see all the monkeys. I feel them and see them. They see a few of them, but they don't know all of them. And so they're like, hey, why can't you get your job done? And so you look bad not only to your superiors, but also to your subordinates when you take on too much. So you've got to delegate. You've got to develop people and let people run.
There's one other aspect to this too. And, Jay, you kind of talked about it a little bit with, hey, they promoted me because I know so much and I do so well. So the big thing is, yes, you probably could do almost everything better than people on your team, but do you have the time, and is that the most value that the company is getting for you to do everything the perfect way or the fastest way?
Yes.
Versus, and all this will lead into our last point, but you've got to have the patience with your employees. You've got to be there as a coach for them so that they can do things as well as you think you could, or kind of to your point too, Jeff, a little bit, you mentioned it with making things better. Someone on your team might have a better idea as to how to do something, and you need to give them the safe space to do that.
Love it.
Yeah. So I just in the last year started facilitating a leadership training program developed by the Leadership Pipeline Institute, and the Leadership Pipeline is a fantastic book that goes through this. You said a really important word, Tom, that is a component of this program, which is when you become a leader of people, you bring value to the organization in a different way now. And so the doing is not the way you bring value to the organization as a leader. It's getting results through other people. Or as you just said, Tom, hey, they may have a better idea. I think I'm going to let them do it their way. And they're either going to learn because it didn't work, or I'm going to learn of a new way to do this that they can share with our team. So the mindset around this one is, don't take on everyone else's monkeys. That's not your job as a leader. The way you bring value to the business is not by taking everyone's problems. It's by leading the team into solving problems and growing and developing people. So I love the shift in mindset that, oh no, I got hired into this role or promoted into this role to do something different than I do now as an individual contributor.
And you may still do some doing, but you've got to totally rethink what that is versus what you used to do.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay. Let's get on to our last one. Train your replacement.
So this one doesn't follow the same wording as the others, but in my mind, this is most important. So, and this feeds from everything else that we've talked about here. So, if you're taking on everyone's monkeys, you're not building relationships with your teams, things are going to just start falling apart eventually. If you really focus on how to train your replacement, now you can't focus on training your replacement day one, right? You've got to figure things out. You've got, if you're looking to improve the team a little bit, you've got to get some results, things along those lines. But through that coaching, through working with others, teaching them how to do processes, teaching them, how to get more efficient with the stuff that's going on. Then when the next role does open up, it's easy for you to transition into that. I don't know if there's ever been a point in my career besides when I left companies and switched roles where I didn't keep the original role that I had in that company somewhere within my organization. I was able to move up and have, that role just be taken by someone else within my organization. Best example is when I worked for a large bank, I was a project manager. Well, I could have, 8-9 years later, I think when I left the company and I had I think I was running a $30 million budget or something like that. That project manager role was still somewhere within my organization. We're probably about 4 or 5 levels, removed from where I was at that time. But it wasn't because I wanted to move out of a role. It was because other people were ready to step into those roles. And by focusing on training those replacements, then when management comes and looks like, hey, who's ready? They're like, oh, Jeff's ready now for that role. Well, is there anyone who can backfill Jeff? No. Well, okay, we can't move Jeff out of that role. Let's go look at Jay. Oh, yeah, Jay might not be as ready as Jeff is, but Jay has someone behind him. Jay has someone
got the role.
Jay has someone behind him who can backfill him already, and the team isn't going to fall apart just because you're pulling the leader out of it.
You pointed out something very important there, and I think it can be an initial response to train my replacement. Well, then they won't need me. But what you're talking about is I'm training my replacement so I can be ready for the next thing. And if you can demonstrate that you can get into a function and train the next leader of that function and successfully develop them, your organization will find a spot for you to go do it somewhere else.
So let me get this right, Tom. I've spent the last 2 years learning and dedicating myself to this, and I've become really good at it, and the organization knows I'm really good at it. You want me to give that up so that I can do something else and somebody else can do what I am known for? What?
Yeah. and I forget the exact words you used there, Jay, but they don't need me.
Yeah.
They don't need me in this role because they've got bigger things for me to do.
Yeah.
So it's all part of career planning, career development.
And you take those learnings and that skill set to the next role. You're not necessarily giving it up completely, but the more you learn and the more you can develop and have a bigger skill set, the more valuable you become to the organization.
And you look for how do you take your transferable skills then? So, like in my case, I was a project manager, then I ran a team of project managers, and that was great. Then I took over customer conversions. Well, that was project management, higher volume, but less there was at least a script to follow a little bit and a lot of variables that were defined within there. Then I moved into managing, non-exempts, and, we were doing, more different types of roles, but you brought your transferable skills across all of those roles. And I learned it heck more myself doing that, but building off the base of skills that I had previously.
That's great. I feel like we could keep going. We also don't need to do our key takeaways because I think these 5 are the key takeaways. I'm going to do a quick recap. And if any of us have any closing thoughts, let's bring them. So 1, management is great, except for the people. Be friendly with your employees, but not their friend. Recognize that you can be a colossal failure, but don't let anyone else know you ever think it. I love that one. Meet all your commitments, but don't overcommit, and train your replacement. Any parting thoughts or encouragements, Tom, for folks entering the management ranks?
Well, one, I just want to thank you guys for allowing me to be on the podcast. It's been a great honor, and just kind of go back to what we said at the beginning. These are intentionally laid out as black and white. It's finding the right shade of gray and finding the consistency in that shade of gray.
Yeah, great tip.
Very good. Tom, thanks for being here. Thanks for listening to The Early Edge, a mentorship podcast for next generation leaders. If you have feedback or would like to submit questions or a topic idea, email us at earlyedge@reddogadvisors.com
or earlyedge@altaimpact.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please follow, subscribe, rate, and review. See you next time.